Two long-range B-1 bombers flew near Venezuela today in the latest demonstration of U.S. military might. Below them, on Venezuela's coast, President Nicolas Maduro's army showed off its own hardware. President Trump said the military is planning to go beyond just striking Venezuelan-linked drug boats in the region.
So now they're coming in by land, and even the land is concerned because I told them that's going to be next. You know, the land is going to be next.
According to the Drug Enforcement Administration, the agency recently announced its largest meth bust in United States history, a discovery that is now being linked to an even larger shadow architecture of transnational crime. Special agents of Homeland Security Investigation are currently out there targeting these trafficking organizations, which have been operating in plain sight under the cover of humanitarian aid. 5:42 a.m. Isla Mariposa. On paper, this was a survival fortress in the middle of the ocean, a private island built to withstand the most devastating storms and owned by a female billionaire known for her global humanitarian relief efforts. Everything presented to the public about Isabella Voss was flawless, from the solar panels stretching across the island to the desalination plant that operated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But stay with me, because what federal agents found when they cut through the first steel door of the island's emergency bunker changed everything we know about how power is used to shield criminal operations. Inside, there was no food, no medical supplies, and no emergency equipment for disaster victims. Instead, agents discovered over $4.7 billion in cash vacuum-sealed and stacked from floor to ceiling behind a second steel door were more than 12 tons of drugs wrapped in black plastic, with absolutely no signs of any legitimate shipment. This was not a storage site. It was the brain of an entire multi-billion-dollar network that had been moving narcotics and cash through the Caribbean for nearly a decade. If you believe this level of corruption goes deeper than the headlines are telling us, comment truth right now and subscribe to the channel.
Because your engagement ensures these stories of institutional betrayal are never buried by the people they expose, the air over the Atlantic was still as federal tactical teams were inserted by helicopter from the north, moving through the darkness in near silence to prevent the destruction of digital evidence from the west. ICE and DIA units approached by speedboat while the Coast Guard sealed the perimeter to ensure no vessel could escape the 3-acre private property. According to intelligence briefings, Isabella Voss appeared untouchable for nearly 10 years, owning luxury hotels in Miami, a maritime transport network in Houston, and a discreet private airline operating out of New Jersey. On television, she was the perfect success story.
Appearing at charity galas beside senators and public officials who praised her impact, but federal investigators were not watching the gala cameras. They were following the ships. The first clue that brought down this empire didn't come from a high-level tip, but from a customs data analyst in San Juan, Puerto Rico, named Mara Navarro. Mara noticed a discrepancy that seemed insignificant to others. A container declared as mobile refrigeration equipment had a weight gap of nearly 9 tons. It wasn't a rounding error. It was a signature. When she pulled the timeline backward, a pattern emerged. The same sender and same route had been used 12 times in 8 months, with every container ending at Isla Mariposa. The Disaster Preparedness Center of the Voss Foundation comment exposed, if you believe every official who signed off on these shipments belongs in federal prison for months. The investigation into Isabella Voss faced a wall of silence within government systems because her foundation's contracts ran deep, and her security staff included former personnel from the very agencies now reviewing the files. But the real turning point came from a story so small it was almost ignored. A package sent to a 19-year-old college sophomore in Phoenix, Arizona. Sarah Mitchell, the student's mother, opened a parcel labeled as imported protein supplements, only to find 2 vacuum-sealed packages of synthetic opioids. When the tracking number was traced, it led to a distribution center outside Dallas that had a logistics contract with a disaster relief provider funded directly by the Voss Foundation. In that moment, the remote island off the coast of Florida was directly connected to a student's bedroom in Arizona, proving the network had already spread inside the United States. 5:52 a.m. The island breach was total. Agents used specialized equipment developed for high-security environments to bypass fingerprint scanners and hydraulic locks that protected the bunker's elevator. The elevator descended for nearly 40 seconds into a structure that scans revealed was nearly 4 times larger than The official blueprints filed with the state what agents found below ground was a masterpiece of criminal engineering on the second level. They uncovered 12 tons of narcotics, cocaine, methamphetamine, and synthetic opioids, hidden inside emergency supply containers labeled for clinics, universities, and disaster relief centers. The system's genius was its danger. No one questions help during a crisis, allowing the network to distribute counterfeit pharmaceutical tablets under the guise of medical aid. On the third level, investigators entered the server room, a narrow corridor filled with the cold blue glow of racks powered by independent backup systems and military-grade satellite links. Screens still displayed active shipping routes across the Caribbean and the United States, with each dot representing a transfer point tied to a specific supplier and bank account. The server data revealed that for years, cash from street-level drug distribution moved south through charitable donations, while drugs moved north through logistics routes disguised as humanitarian operations. Then came the discovery of the chapel, a glass-walled counting room beneath the main villa that contained steel tables, vacuum sealers, and money counters. On the wall hung a framed photo of Isabella Voss shaking hands with officials after a hurricane relief donation, but below it were physical ledgers that told a different story. One ledger tracked protection allocations, listing coded payments to port supervisors, customs consultants, and political fundraisers. This was a parallel power structure operating in the shadows that served the network rather than the Constitution. While the raid was underway, Isabella Voss's private jet had already left Miami, but she hadn't fled. She had gone to a warehouse in South Carolina containing backup archives and leverage files. At 8:16 a.m., FBI agents arrested Voss outside that facility. In Charleston, she was calm and composed, asking only one question: how far did they get? A second search beneath the Charleston warehouse uncovered additional hard drives, gold bars, and folders labeled by city, containing photos of private meetings involving criminals, executives, and public officials. By the end of the first weekend, over 70 people were in federal custody, including a senior official in charge of emergency procurement whose signature had pushed Voss shipments through during hurricane season by labeling them as critical humanitarian cargo. This official's department had ensured that inspections were dropped and fees were waived, proving that Isla Mariposa wasn't just hidden from the system, it was protected by it. Forensic accountants are now tracing a web of cryptocurrency transactions leading into Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia, as it becomes clear that this was not just a local scandal, but one link in a much larger underground financial network. Transaction logs showed activity that did not stop even at the moment of arrest, as $14.6 million was redistributed across 19 separate accounts in just 6 hours, triggered by a contingency protocol internally coded as Phase 2. This secondary layer of the network, composed of mid-level coordinators embedded in regulatory boards and financial institutions, was designed to allow the system to outlive any single leader. The operation at Isla Mariposa has officially ended, but the investigation into the shadow architecture that supported it is only beginning. For years, power provided the protection that allowed $4.7 billion in cash to be stored beneath a humanitarian facade. The human cost of this betrayal is immeasurable, as many victims were moved through channels designed to protect them, and families are still searching for children who disappeared into these trafficking pipelines. This case is a cold reminder that some of the most dangerous threats don't wear masks. They wear surgical gowns, hold prestigious titles, and ask to be trusted. They don't break the law, they occupy it. What was dismantled on the island was significant, but the vulnerability it exposed, the proof of how a coordinated network can penetrate deep into the systems we rely on, remains stay alert and stay skeptical, because the real danger is not just what was uncovered, but what still remains hidden in the shadows of authority. If you believe the truth behind these operations must be exposed, hit like and subscribe. Because public attention is the only force that can end this cycle of corruption. Comment protect if you stand with the analysts like Mara Navarro, who refused to look away until the walls fell and the truth was counted.